Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stop Resisting Change and Start Controlling It. This 50-minute webcast is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor and Canopy. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. Before we get started, I'd like to explain how the CPE for this webcast works. The webcast is 50 minutes. It might go a little over that, but won't be more than an hour, and qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for at least 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 4 polling questions during the webcast. In each poll, you need to record an answer, as this is our verification that you are still watching the webcast. You'll need to answer at least 3 of the polls in order to qualify for CPE. Later today, you'll receive an email from CPA Practice Advisor, which will contain a link to your CPE certificate, assuming you met the qualifications for certification. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people at the same location. So if there are others in your office who would like to attend this event on the same computer, please have them join you now. At the end of this event, we'll have you send us their email addresses so they can also get continuing education credit. At any time, you can enter questions in the Ask a Question box that is provided on your screen, and our speaker will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Questions not answered during the presentation will be addressed by the speaker afterwards via email. If you have any difficulty answering polling questions online, you can post your answers to those questions in this Ask a Question box, and we'll record them there. The slides for this session are available for download. If you notice on your screen, there's an option called Event Resources. And if you click on that, a PDF will appear that you can download, and that has the slides for this presentation. Also, the archived version of this presentation will appear on CPA Practice Advisor's website after the event ends. Note, however, that CPE will not be available for watching the archived version. We are grateful to Canopy today for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to our attendees. And today we are joined by Sean Duncan. I'm going to let Sean introduce himself and tell you a bit about him. And now we're ready to begin.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gail. So yes, my name is Sean Duncan. You'll see some information about me here in a second. So the whole concept today is we want to talk about change and change management. But first, let's explain a little bit of my background. I am not going to bore you to tears with my whole long sob story or success story, however you want to take it. But I am the president and founder of a firm called SMD Consulting and Accounting, have several other companies. One is the Chief Proactive Advisor Program, and one is Helping Hand RIA. I'm securities licensed. So we also do wealth management through our firm in addition to advisory services. But a little bit about my background. So first and foremost, if you've never met me before, the only reason I'm an accountant was I was going into the FBI. And in 2003, I turned them down, which now why was I going to be an accountant if I didn't want to be an FBI agent? So in 2003, when I turned them down, I realized I wanted to be a husband and father more than I wanted to chase bad guys. And so I spent this time right after turning them down trying to figure out what was I going to do again. And I started my firm, SMD Consulting and Accounting, and it was named that way on purpose, SMD Consulting and Accounting. Because in 2006, when I started my firm, I realized a lot of small business owners don't get advice. We are trained to do taxes and books and audit and those things, but proactive advice for small business owners simply just didn't exist, or at least not in my circles and the people that I met in my area. And I just had a hunch clients wanted that. Holy cow, I was right. By 2017, I was the largest firm in Frisco, Texas. Now, if you don't know anything about Frisco, Texas, it's where the Dallas Cowboy headquarters is now. The PGA headquarters is here. They're building a Universal Studios between those 2 headquarters. This place is bonkers. And so for me to be the largest firm in town is success. And you can see on the screen, it says it in quotes, by every metric we were taught, I was killing it. But the problem was, while I was making money and growing in clients and adding employees and building, bigger spaces for the office and all those things, I was working too many hours and I wasn't spending time with my family. Now, if I had turned down the FBI before I had kids because I wanted to spend time with them, I sure couldn't let taxes cause that. And so I made a huge change. And the change was I fired all the tax returns. We specifically in 2017 said we're going to double down and start creating a firm that is focused on proactive, subscription-based or fixed fee advice. Now, back in 2017, we've all heard the term advisory thrown all over the place. I'm going to tell you, the word advisory did not exist in 2017. This was a giant, weird change that I was making. I was making this change because I felt like I needed to do more for my family and myself from a personal standpoint, but I still needed to get back to doing things right for my clients because I was a successful tax firm. And if you are a tax firm, you know what that means. That means you're working a lot of ridiculous hours in most circumstances to meet the needs of deadlines, which takes you away for 5 to 6 months of the year. And so while success in the traditional sense was there, I was not personally successful and not fulfilling my mission of helping clients with their advice. And so did it work? Did it not work? Well, the giant change was exactly what I needed to do. My margins are much, much higher. I think the last metric that I ran is my net income percent is 4.5 times what my net income percent was in comparison to back when I was successful as a tax firm. Now, I specifically highlight net income because, guys, that's what we care about. Revenue is not the metric we should be tracking. We should be tracking what we actually get to keep. But I get to spend more time with my family. And I said this morning at a session that if I take less than 6 weeks of vacation a year, I'm angry. I'll take a full month in the summer. And pay attention, I take every spring break as a vacation, which is a sin in the tax world, but that's what I do. I wanted to be there for my family. But what's really interesting is my employees are happier because they're not working ridiculous hours. They're doing more meaningful work. The clients are happier because we're giving them greater value and what they're looking for. But then all of that led to this next slide where I'm paying it forward. I have a program where I teach CPA firms how to make that transition. We're not going to talk a lot about that today, but a lot of firms struggle with how do I make the change? Now, do I keep using the word change on purpose when I'm describing it? Yes. Change is the whole point of this. How do you manage change? How do you manage these giant changes? Because I made giant changes. I pivoted from my identity as becoming an FBI agent to building a firm, to building a successful firm, to then changing that firm into a subscription-based business and continually changing. And in fact, just this morning, I was speaking to a college class of accounting students, and we were talking about change and progress through their careers. And they're struggling with, how do I make exactly the right choice? Like, how do I know if I want to go tax or audit? Or I've heard there's these specialty things like valuation services or litigation support or app integration. And I explained to them, you're going to continue to change. You're going to navigate no matter where you are in your career, no matter where you are in your firm, you're going to change, period. And so that's the whole concept of this. Now, when I get into this whole session, I promise you, my goal is not to talk high level only. I want to talk high levels and concepts, but I also want to talk about actionable and practical things. So I just love this quote as it relates to it. The measure of intelligence is your ability to change. Now, what I've discovered is the older I get, the less likely I want or less I want to change. So I don't know if that means I'm getting dumber as time going on, but we're gonna skip past those facts and circumstances. We're gonna go with what Albert Einstein says, that the ability to change is really true intelligence. Now, before we jump into the session, we're gonna make sure you're paying attention. Hey, Gail, what you got for him? A poll question.
I have your first poll question. This is the first of 4. And the question is, how important do you think it is to focus on upskilling to stay relevant in the evolving accounting industry? And your answer options are, you think it's very important, you think it's somewhat important, or you're comfortable where you are right now. So choose one of those 3 answers and then click the submit button. And we'll share our results with you as these start to come in. And we'll leave this up on the screen for a few seconds. Remember, if you have any trouble answering, you can just post your answer in the ask a question box and we'll get it there.
And I love this question because it ties into change. Obviously, change is not just I'm changing my client mix or I'm changing my price. It could be anything. It can be pure skill changes that go with this. So,
right. So just a few more seconds. We'll give everyone a chance to answer in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And it looks like we're seeing about 75% coming in at very important and about 20% at somewhat important.
I love that some of you are like, we're comfortable where we at, because like I'm jealous. I feel like every single day I'm forced to skill something up or learn something new. It's like I turn around and there's AI, and I turn around and there's some new thing that I have to learn. So kudos to you if you're locked and loaded and ready to go. That's pretty spectacular.
Right.
But most of us, well, we do have to change. So again, we're going to start concepts first, and then we're going to get into some meat and potatoes and actionable items. But what happens without change? Now, change, again, can take a lot of different shapes. But generally, if you don't evolve in some way as a human being, as a family, as a business, things will leave you behind and you'll be less profitable as a business. For example, in theory, you could still use green bar paper to do your bookkeeping. You could. You refuse to change to technology. But man, you are not going to be making the money you could if you were more efficient. Your employees will start to stagnate if you're not giving them new challenges and new ways to grow. How many times have we heard that I had no opportunity in my future? That's because there's lack of change, lack of opportunity. So watching your reduced efficiency, these are all things that can happen. These are sort of the downsides of staying put. Now, if you're retiring in 30 days, I don't feel like you should probably invest a whole lot of money and time in change. You got this. Congratulations. You've hit the sunset. Go learn to fish better. That's the change that we're looking for. But most of us are building and growing and evolving our firms. We're building and growing our skills. And honestly, I personally love learning new stuff. So I'm probably going to constantly do this. But in the business context, that's what we're talking about. Lack of differentiation, obsolescence, these are all consequences of failure to do so. But of course, we all resist change. Change by itself. I mean, again, I'm a grumpy old man. I don't want to change a piece of software. Why? Why don't we do this? If we know these are the bad consequences of not making a change, and there's these opportunities to seize, why do we resist it so much? Fear is obviously the number one answer. I'm going to go with the second one too, is a big one for me and for people I've worked with. It's just the lack of time and energy. It feels like, oh, it's such a heavy lift. I don't have time for this. Cultural resistance. Believe it or not, depending on how your firm works, we've actually worked with firms that experience that the staff doesn't want to change. And every time leadership tries to implement a new initiative, there's a culture of resistance. And that's a whole different challenge. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to combat that. But the culture could be that way, and you'd have to address that differently. Uncertainty about the output. I mean, my gosh, what's the result going to be? And also, I probably should point out my speaking style. I'm not going to read every single bullet list. You guys are fully capable of reading the bullets. So I encourage you, when we're done with this, take the PowerPoint and take a look at it and look at some of the stuff that I didn't touch on, because there's a lot of meat in here, but we also only have 50 some odd minutes together. So I'm not going to beat you down with that. So why do we resist it? We know these are issues. How do we combat it is really the key to it. And where does some studies go and come into to give you tools to work with that? Before we jump into that, let's change to another slide that involves Gail.
Okay, this is our second polling question. And it is, what kind of change are you planning in 2025? And your options are upgrading software, adding advisory services, hiring more people, increasing your fees. You only get to pick one of those. I know. Pick the top one, or if it's something else, we would love for you to share it in the chat and let us know in the Q&A. So you could pick E and then tell us what it is that you're planning on changing. And we'll leave this up for a little bit longer so that people have time to think about their answer on this one.
Yeah, when I created this question, like I said, I had 10 answers and realized that was going to get unwieldy. So congratulations to other. You're going to hopefully fill in the other 5 or 6 answers that I had in mind. And change, I mean, obviously can't be it's not singular, right? There's things that evolve and they build on themselves. And one of the classes I teach, we talk about the Gantt chart and project management and how you have to build that flow out, because one thing, you can't do all those things at one time. I mean, you could attempt to hire more people and add three new pieces of software and add an entire service line and increase your fees, but I think the stroke you'll suffer in the midst of that might not be worth it. Interesting, good mix, guys. This is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And I like Lisa's answer as reducing the number of individual tax clients. Strategic choice there. Yeah, when I tell a story, when I let all of our tax clients go, that was 75% of my revenue. In the span of 30 days, I let go 75% of my revenue. But what that did is it cleared the decks for much higher value clients. In fact, on the advisory services side of things, while we're still waiting for the poll, and I'll stop talking in a moment, my average new client back when we were grinding tax returns, again, 2017, so pricing has changed a bit, was about $800 a year. My average new client is now $24,000 a year. So slightly different when you're culling out the people that aren't the high end. All right, how are we feeling, Gail?
I think we've got all the answers in at this point, and it is spread across the board.
Yep. Awesome. And thank you guys for adding into the comments as well, for those of you that are doing other stuff. All righty, so let's rock and roll with the slides. So I love this saying that Canopy uses, would your future self be proud of you? I actually used this morning when I was speaking to the students, is when you're making choices, of careers and changes and pricing models and services and what clients you want, if you take this barometer of what would your future self look at this decision? Because none of our decisions are perfect, but if you make it with the best intention in mind, and is this the direction you want your life to go? Way too often we fall into the trap of Sally, same as last year. We just kind of keep doing the grind. But if you think forward, is this what I really wanted to do with my life? And would your future self be proud of that choice? This really helps a lot with change management decisions. So right now, we're in a weird state in our industry. I mean, we're in a kind of a position of turmoil because technology is coming in. We've watched it. AI is starting to replace a lot of the grunt work that we're doing, and that's only going to continue. More apps are coming in. You may or may not have heard of this very large company that decided it wanted to directly compete with tax preparers. That stuff's not going to stop. So tech and companies are changing. If I had you in a room, I would ask for the quick show of hands, or how many are having problem with staffing and finding the right talent? I mean, hands are going to fly up everywhere. There is a dilemma in our industry where greater than 70% of the CPAs in practice today are 65 or older right now. But yet there was something like a 40 to 60% decrease in the number of new students taking the CPA exam. That's not a sustainable solution. Now, granted, the technology is going to help fill that gap, but where we sit today, AI is coming in and making people lose jobs. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what's going to happen, is because folks that were focused on data entry are getting replaced with data entry related services. Employees aren't coming in to fill the gap, so we're not getting the new employees to fill that stuff. Remote work is creating all kinds of dilemmas for people that are used to standing in an office. Globalization, I mean, how many people are outsourcing to other countries right now? Upskilling question, right? There's just a lot happening in our industry. And you can face that as, oh my gosh, this is terrifying, or oh my gosh, this is an opportunity. And I literally said this to one student that asked me about this morning. I said, you have this opportunity to see where things are going and make decisions and changes today. Again, there's our change word, changes today, to position yourself for success, knowing where this stuff comes from. So this is really fascinating things, that it's a weird time, but it's really an opportunity more than it is an issue or a challenge. It's just sometimes stressful to go, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for X number of years. I mean, I've been in accounting for 27, 28 years. I've lost track of the years. It's a very, very different world that we're in. But while we do that, and David, I will answer your question in a second. Okay, we're going fast to the poll questions, and then we're not going to keep breaking this up. There's only 4 poll questions, but we're going to give you the third one right now. So Gail, I'll let you hit it, and then David, I will answer your question. Or Dave, I'll answer your question.
Okay. The question is, how has remote work and virtual collaboration affected your communication with clients and team members? Answer options are, it's the same as before. It has improved a lot with digital tools. Communication has been somewhat of a challenge, or our firm really hasn't adopted remote work. So pick the answer that is most closely aligned with your own experience, and then click submit.
So while that's going, Dave asked the question, where did my new clients come from? So there's a lot of strategic choices on it. I will say that every time I think I'm going to be an adult and start doing real marketing, social media or advertising, I really spend a lot of my energy networking. I meet other lawyers and financial advisors. I meet other accountants. Do not discount the value of meeting us, because quite frankly, what I do is different than what you do. And referrals for people that really get it and don't see each other as competition, I've gotten some of my best and largest clients from other accountants. So networking has been tremendously valuable to me. But also, I did just recently start messing around with social media posts, and we're going to see how that goes. But it has been almost entirely networking. And then you do word of mouth. I mean, good referrals will come from you being good at your job. I have also implemented a new policy in my office where I'm going to have my staff, and I gave them a whole cheat sheet and script for how you ask for a referral. Because if you crushed it for a client, you shouldn't be afraid to ask for referrals. In fact, I'll go ahead and give you this while we're still waiting on the poll. Over 90% of the time, and I might be rounding these numbers, but if a referral is given, the person that is referred trusts that referral by 90% or more of the time. So when you get the referral, they already like you. You have an easier sales process. And get this, over 80% of the time when you ask for a referral, you're going to get it. Think about that. Over 80% of the time when you ask a client, hey, do you know anybody else because I love working with you. But did you know that less than 20% of the time does a professional ask for the referral? So you want new clients? Go to your clients and just ask them. So hopefully that helps, Dave. I know that's a little off topic, but for this part, but hopefully that was valuable. All right, Miss Gail, I stalled for you.
Okay, so our answers came in, and more than half said that their communication has improved a lot with digital tools. And the rest of the answers are all about the same amount of answers for each. So, yeah.
This is a challenge we have to adjust to, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can also say it's not going away. I know a lot of big companies are pulling people back, but remote work is a thing. And I will tell you that you can also use it strategically. You can hire in states that have lower revenue or lower salary requirements, and that could actually help your margins. Just throwing it out there. All right. Let's really get into this. We front loaded those poll questions so that we can lock and load without interrupting as much. How does change typically come at us? Now, a lot of the stuff that's on these slides, I spent a bunch of time pulling research and data and articles. There's a lot of stuff behind it. Do not discount the simplicity of a lot of these points because it's distilled articles that you didn't have to go read. So you're welcome. Basically, there's three ways changes come at us. It's forced on us. We don't have a choice. You discover an opportunity and you pounce on it, or you plan whatever that change is. And none of them are wrong and none of them are right. They literally all have pros and cons. And speaking of the words pros and cons, hey, look at that, pros and cons. When change is forced on us, this is when you don't have a choice. Like it's happening, you're making a change. It could be your software vendor went out of business. It could be that an employee quit. It could be that clients left. It could be anything. It could be a pandemic. I don't know if you've ever heard of that happening before. The pro of that is usually proven solutions exist. There's tools that are out there. When you're a software vendor, there's a competitor, right? You don't have to even sell it to your employees because everybody's rowing the boat at the same direction. There is no buy-in needed because dang it, we have no choice. So there's a lot of plus to it, and urgency creates results sometimes. Downside is urgency leads to a time crunch. Sometimes if your internet provider dies and the router dies and you've got to run to Best Buy to go buy a new router, well, you might not be really shopping for the best deal because you kind of need to get online. As simple as that sounds like a change, I'm changing my router, it's still change and it was forced on you. I don't know about you. I don't like the stress that comes with it. I don't get to control the timing. I just have to, I have to fly and just do what I need to do. I don't get to brainstorm options. I've got to solve whatever that problem is. So it has its pros, but a lot of times the stress component of it. This is the, in my opinion, the least favorable, but you know what? Sometimes when you are a late adopter, you just go, yep, I'm going to go with the proven solution. And we accountants like our data and proven solutions. But what if you discover something? Some awesome opportunity comes in. Holy cow, I can charge $1 bajillion for these BOI reports. I'm going to go after it. You see the immediate value. That's a huge pro. Sometimes you don't even have to go into a lot of upfront work. You just see this nice, beautiful door open up and you run on through it. And there's often a lot of times a low cost. That's why it's an opportunity. It's this discovery moment of like, holy cow. Now, downside, we don't get to paralysis by analysis. Now, technically, that could be also a positive, but you don't really get a lot of time. Sometimes when an opportunity is presented to you, you got to make a choice and you got to make it quick. It could be an employee candidate comes up and is right there in front of you. You're not quite sure if they're perfect fit or not, but they look awesome. There's a lot of things that can hit us, and there's downside to it. And you know what? I will tell you that I'm sure we've all fallen prey to the slick salesperson. This sounds like an opportunity because somebody said this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you kind of knee-jerk your way into it. So just kind of pay attention to opportunities. Give yourself enough time to do comparison, but you really can't do exhaustive research like we accountants are known to do. So then what if you plan for it? So pros and cons. Hey, pro, you got time to analyze. We've talked about that in comparison to the other two. You have time to get buy-in. This will be an important fact when we start talking about things a little bit later on solutions. You can adjust other parts of the business. So for example, those of you that said you're wanting to add advisory services, you know that you're wanting to add advisory services. You can start to think about what types of services, how am I going to charge for it? What's my client mix going to look like? What am I going to do with my existing clients? Am I going to upsell? Am I going to give a discount? What does my engagement letter need to sound like, right? These are planning opportunities. Whereas if your client walks into you and says, I need you to sit down and advise me now. Well, maybe you bill by the hour, but you should have been billing value. You don't have a chance to adjust because you got to sit down and bill by the hour. And then you save them $1 million and you're like, well, I made $350. Woo. Right? So you have a chance with these moments where you plan. Downside, it takes effort, y'all. You have to start thinking differently. You have to be a business owner. And I keep saying business. I will say that for those of you that are employees and not business owners, this applies to you, your career, your skill set. Everything applies. Change is not only isolated to business owners, but topically, we're talking a lot about businesses. But think about how that applies to your career. You can spend time doing the comparative research, but the con I put this on is because it takes time to do it. And a lot of us don't feel like we have free time. So the time you're doing this comparative research could lead to paralysis by analysis, and then you spiral. And I know we've all been around that before where you can just overdo it. And you know what? When you're planning ahead, sometimes you're ahead of the curve. When I fired all my clients and built a firm based on advisory services in 2017, it didn't exist. There was no model out there. There was no Sean coming out there to teach you a process to make the change and give you guidance on pricing models and client mix. I was guessing. And while it was absolutely the right choice, I made some boo-boos. And that's part of planning for change, especially when you're trying to innovate. So as we get into this, before I go to this next slide, I want to point something out. I mentioned a little bit earlier that when I read a bunch of articles and a bunch of stuff that talks about solutions, a lot of things I focused on was project management language, project management processes. Do not discount the simplicity of these next two slides. They truly are distilled. If you really get bored and you want to go research articles on this stuff, there's one lady that has a 75-page article, and it's a lot of words that basically says this slide. The key factors to consider when making a change. It's called the 5 R's. There's one place that talks about it as the 6 R's. But essentially, whenever you're making a change, why? What's the reason? If I make this change, what's the ROI? Because you got to decide if it's even worth it. What are the risks associated with it? Because any change can crash and burn on you, right? You could have employees get ticked off that you changed something that they loved. You have to consider every possible risk. What are the resources you need? Is it money? Is it time? Is it technology? Is it physical space? I don't know. And who's responsible? Who is going to be the champion of this thing? These, again, are so simple to stare at and go, yeah, of course, Sean. But when you really stop to think about it, I had a software vendor approach me to talk about changing over something in the technology, changing our technology over to their platform. The reason was they believe it's a better tool. All right. I kind of agree it's slightly better, but it's not big better. Like the ROI is, yeah, it's there, but it's not going to change our life. It's going to give me some cool new features. What are the risks? Well, now I got to do an entire implementation, and I might have the software break along the way, and then I've got data to move and the resources it would take for the employees to learn the new tools. While its reason is it gives me a little more efficiency, when I got into ROI and risk and resources, I didn't even have to worry about who was responsible because we weren't going to do it. It can break at any point. If there's not a good reason, if there's not good ROI, anytime you do a change, I really encourage you, just stop and think about the 5 R's. Memorize the 5 R's, because these are legitimately project management tricks that are out there. And speaking of tricks, this is a second one. This is another series of articles from a bunch of project management people. This is how you should approach change. You've assessed that you need to do a change, right? You've decided the ROI is there. I've got the resources. We're changing practice management software. I'm going to implement Canopy, and it's going to take time because it's not going to happen in 30 seconds. All right. I know that if I do this, some of my employees are going to squawk, and it's going to give me an ulcer, but I know I need to do this. The ROI is there. And I'll say, actually, Canopy is a really good example, not just because they're the sponsor. We made a change to Canopy because my employees told me to make the change. And this is going to matter here in a second, a ton. There was so much value that even though it took several months to implement everything, everybody was on board. So first, you start with creating awareness. You create an awareness among your team and your people or decision makers, but I would encourage you, everyone should have awareness of whatever the pain or opportunity is that you're trying to solve. In best practices, you let that simmer a little bit. You don't come in and say, we're changing because bam, take it or leave it, because then you're going to get resistance. You create awareness of a problem or create awareness of an opportunity. And you as the owner or partners can go, we're thinking about some opportunities. You may have already decided, it doesn't matter. This naturally flows into creating a desire for a solution to that change. So you've created an awareness that our pricing is too low and profitability is hurt. We need to make a change. We're analyzing opportunities. Your employees will hear that. Now, you may not want to tell them that profitability is hurt, but you can talk about margins. And so you get in there and you talk about, and you create a desire. When a desire emerges, a lot of times somebody raises their hand inadvertently. They have an ownership to it. They're like, I want to find a solution. I want to help with that. I really believe we need to make a change. When the team or decision makers have ownership that there needs to be a solution, again, you might have already decided the solution. When they need that solution, you're immediately going to have a better opportunity to make a transition. Because think about it, if your team is resisting you when you're trying to make a change, it just makes it that much harder. But when everybody's buying in, they acknowledge that there's a problem or an opportunity, they have a desire to solve that, they then want to solve that and pitch in different ways, then you start constructing solutions. Now, you can do what's called the wizard's trick, or that you say, here are the 4 things that we're looking at, and you already know which one's the best, but be open to them giving you a better solution. But you go in there and you try to identify what those solutions are. That builds acceptance. If you have ever implemented change at a business, if you don't have the acceptance, somebody's going to cause problems. And by the way, if you have that one stubborn employee that refuses to do whatever you've now implemented as a change, you might have to let them go or train them or whatnot. But these 5 little steps, now there's other articles that have 6 steps and there's some that have 9. I want to keep this simple. This is the trick to implementing change. You create awareness, you create desire, and there's a flow to how these things work. Every single change, you can go through this process. Some will take longer to do, some will be short. But if you go in and say, our router is broken, it doesn't work, well, people are going to have a desire to have connectivity. Somebody's going to go, I'm going to run over to Best Buy right now. And you're like, okay, well, which one do we want? Do we want to upgrade? You can take a few minutes, boom, somebody goes and everybody's on board. It's a simple thing. But when you approach changing software, hiring more employees, buying a new building, changing price models, firing all your tax clients, you want to have as much buy-in as you possibly can. Now, ultimately, the buck stops with the owner. But what was interesting is in my Canopy solution, when I switched to Canopy, my employees came to me and told me, this is what we're changing. And I loved that because there was immediate buy-in and everybody was on board. And to the question that Dave asks is, what does Canopy do for me? Not going to make this a marketing video, but I will tell you that it's my entire practice management. It's my document security storage. It's also my IRS transcript pull. And they have a lot of features as it relates to CRM on the front end on sales side. But it is the center of everything. It collects all of our emails. So essentially we have a rule. If it's not in Canopy, it doesn't exist because all of the data and files are there. It's linked to Outlook. So all of the emails are there and we can search. And there's a ton of AI inside of it that gives reports as well. But it's largely how we run our practice. So quick answer for you there, Dave. So thank you for asking that. But I want to keep going here. And these two slides I just showed you, like I said, they're really, really simple. But no joke, this, if you go out there and look at industry data, this is distilled down article upon article upon article that come down to these 5 things. Now, after the next poll question, I'm going to give you some little tricks that I have personally used that are similar but veer off. So if you want a different flavor of something I specifically do, hold tight after this next poll question.
All right, everybody, this is poll question number 4. Remember, you need to answer at least 3 polling questions to qualify for CPE credit. This question is, how well does your firm track and measure the effectiveness of change management efforts? And the possible answers are a good amount of measurement with defined KPIs. That's key performance indicators. Next, limited amount of tracking, there's room for improvement. Or the third answer is we have no formal tracking of change management outcomes. So think about how this all plays out in your firm and which answer is most appropriate for your company. And
this is a tough one because every circumstance is going to be a little bit different, but by and large, a generalization is there. And there's no wrong answer to it. It's just what is, right?
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, like just staying on that theme with the Canopy thing, my staff, when they were making the change, and I still get a kick out of it because they basically told me what software I'm going to buy, which I just thought was hilarious. But it saved us $800 a month, and we increased our functionality, and we consolidated 3 other pieces of software into one. So I have fewer tech stack tools. It's consolidated, and it saved me money. So they didn't have a really hard argument. But the same concept came to when we were brainstorming, should we keep doing tax returns? By the way, the answer of tax returns is like the client still needs them, right? We outsource all of that. When I talked about sending work back and forth to CPAs, I subcontract or refer all the tax prep work. I have one guy last year we sent over $100 and something thousand worth of work to, just on tax prep. He focused on the prep. We focus on the advisory services, and the client gets a synergistic relationship. So even when you decide not to do something, you still have to solve for it, right? You still have to have a solution. And our change management solution was, let other CPAs who are superstars and love tax prep, let them be awesome. And so when we got into the KPIs, we got into how much revenue did we send and how much referral work are we getting back? I mean, there's a lot of other ways to measure it, but it was a huge success because it created a lot of great relationships with other professionals.
All right, so here's how our answers are shaking out. It looks like 56% say no formal tracking of change management outcomes. 32% limited amount of tracking, there's room for improvement, and 11% have a good amount with measurement with defined KPIs.
And I will say, by the way, that is the standard chart that I've seen out of doing this. I've taught this session a lot in both in person and online, and it's very, very common. So if you're kind of like kicking yourself, just take some time to figure out what do you care about? Because if we're going to make sure it's worth your while, I do want you to take some time to get some kind of a KPI. And KPIs are not, I know they're supposed to be quantifiable math related. It can be also, I like it and I feel better about it. I like the people I work with as a vendor. I feel better about this new office. So sometimes it's not a measurable, sometimes it's just a feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so my strategy, this is just a simple little trick that I use, and I have used it a bajillion times over my career. I immediately start with building a weakness or challenge list. And this is just a brainstorming what doesn't work the way I want it to. And it can be anything. It could be my job. It can be my employee's job. It can be a technology solution. Just brainstorm everything. And if you have a team, ask them. Pool the information of all the stuff. Now, this is going to sound like a whining and complaint session. That's not its goal. It's to data capture. Where do we feel we have problems? And then you rank them. What's the biggest problem staring me in the face? That's the thing I need to know. But I don't want this to all be about negative, because sometimes, yes, we want to fix stuff that's broken. Yes, we want to think to shore up weaknesses. But I also really believe in focusing on strengths. In fact, when I do employee interviews, one of my very first questions is, I know we're all bad at certain things. I'm terrible at certain things. I am terrible at payroll. I am terrible at bookkeeping. Yeah, I'm a CPA, but I'm just not good at it. I like to focus on my strengths. So I'll ask employees, what are you great at? What do you love? If I give you this project or this work, what are you going to crush it on? Well, that's the same concept here. What are the opportunities that you guys know you're good at something? Man, how can we leverage this talent of this person? How can I seize this opportunity for growth or improvement? How do I use AI to really be better? Because AI is not a weakness yet, right? AI is still in the opportunity phase. Now, will in the future, people that aren't implementing AI, are you going to be behind the curve? Yeah, it's just like the people that are still filling out tax returns by hand. They're way behind and they have a weakness. Right now, it's an opportunity. So how do we seize those opportunities? Is there an opportunity for expansion and acquisition? Everything. And again, it's a brainstorm. There is no limitation. You're not talking about opportunities in the next 6 weeks. It could be opportunities in the next 5 years. One opportunity I'm building on myself, I'm building my firm to where I'm useless. If I am useless, I have a company. If I'm required for the success or failure of my company, I have a job, and my boss is terrible because he always knows when I'm playing video games, and I don't like that. So if I am specifically seizing this opportunity of training up my staff to where they can run things and I can be the visionary owner and help other firms and do other things like that. So when you have these opportunities, it doesn't even have to be right in front of you. It could be a future goal. List them and then rank them. Now, you probably guessed, because you read ahead, cheater, blend them. Blend the list. There is no perfect answer to this, right? You're going to make judgment calls. This opportunity is so much more important than even the biggest weakness. Combine that list into one comprehensive ranking. Now, I want to go ahead and spill the beans here. You are not going to get to everything. This is the challenge. There are so many things. There is never an end to the work we have to do as a business owner. What you have to do is you have to prioritize. Now, here's some tricks on prioritization, because you would assume I just do number 1, 2, 3 and go in order. Not necessarily. What I want you to do is take a moment and circle everything that is urgent. Believe it or not, something urgent can be further down the list because it's not as important on whatever ranking system you use. Because again, we're using your non-scientific ranking. You're deciding what's most important to you. But sometimes things are like, you know what? This is going to hurt me if I don't take care of this. I'm going to use the dumb router example. I don't know why I picked that one for today, but that's what I picked for today. If you have no internet connectivity, it may not be the biggest deal in your world and change your life, but dang it, I need the internet. So you need to immediately plan on handling these within at least the next 12 months. It may be in the next 30 minutes, right? You get to decide. But you circle everything that just is like, this is trouble. This is going to hurt us. But then I want you to go in and highlight the easy ones. something that's not going to take you more than a week with minimal or interruptional work. Like, you know what? This isn't going to change my life, but man, I can check the box. If you ever want to feel successful in a day, just give yourself something to check off the list, right? I told one of my employees that when they have the task list, these are the 6 things they want to do today, but then the client calls and interrupts them and asks some questions, but they solve that problem with the client. Here's a trick. You write that as item number 7 on your list, and then you highlight it off as completed. We are all completionists. We all love knocking stuff off the list. Let's use it to our advantage. Use the easy ones and do no less than one of these a quarter. I want you to feel the win of the progress, because also you're making progress. And then the last one, highlight the fun ones. There might be something in there that's not urgent and earth-shattering, but you're excited about it. You're excited about learning AI. You're excited about building a new skill. You're excited about, I don't know, I'm securities licensed. Maybe you want to add securities to part of your offering and how you can collaborate with that. Like, you want to do it. This is your career. This is your life. This is your business. You are allowed, you have my permission to enjoy parts of it. It does not have to be a grind. I know that every day isn't, birds and butterflies and, songs. It can be work. But let's mix the stuff in there that you just want to do. Give yourself that annual goal. Do at least one of these a year. And so then when you have this list, you're going to be chipping away at it, right? Maybe you have those urgent items that have to be done in 30 days, and every quarter you're knocking out an easy one. Redo your list every quarter. No less than annually, but I really would prefer you stop, you look at the list again, and you add new things. You can remove things. So back to Dave's question about how did I get new clients? No joke. Every year since 2006, when I started my firm, some version of create a marketing strategy has been on my list. And every time I'm like, I'm going to go create a marketing strategy and I'm going to do social media, or I'd get 10 referrals. Well, I'm not going to take the 10 referrals. I'm not going to worry about tweaking my website in some goofy way and creating buy-in when I've got 10 people that I can close as a deal. And so it's been on my list. It just keeps getting moved down in the priority every quarter because I would try it and then I would get into it. And so these things will happen. You don't want to ignore the urgent ones, right? Those are urgent for a reason, but your firm's going to change. The industry is going to change. How many of us had strategies in 2020 that we kind of didn't implement because there was this COVID thing that came in? Life changes. And so you have to be willing to adapt to it. If you're building a process, you can use the 5 R's, you can use those 5 steps, you can use my little tricks there, but use something. Now, I've been talking for almost the full 50 minutes already, but this next part, for those of you that are here, and we got thousands of you online, congratulations for all thousands of you that are hanging on with this. I want you to pay attention to this next thing. This, and you can see the little TM, there's a little trademark. If I have one secret to my success, this is it. I have an entire webinar I've taught on this, that an hour of just talking about this one slide, but I want to give you the high points. It's a concept called the work on the business day. Now, if you've heard of Michael Gerber and the E-Myth and how you want to be working on the business versus in the business, it's part of that. At least quarterly, which, hey, wait a second, didn't I just say go back and do this at least quarterly? Oh, that's kind of funny how this kind of merges together. At least quarterly, I want you to have a meeting with yourself. Now think about this. Let me give you some perspective. If your largest client calls you immediately after this seminar and says, holy cow, I need you. Everything is changing. I need to make big decisions. I need you tomorrow for the whole day. Can we sit in the conference room and just work on this? I will, of course, pay you a full rate, but I need you. I need you. I need to make big decisions. You're going to make the time. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to make that time, and you're probably not going to be checking emails when you're talking with him or her, and you're not going to be distracted. You're not going to be on the phone. You're going to lock it in because this is your biggest client. It's your highest revenue client. You can't risk ticking them off. We're going to do this. Well, who really is your biggest client? Who is the one individual that generates the most work, the most productivity, the most revenue, the most opportunity for you and your firm? It's you. So if you treat you like your biggest client, Go have a meeting with yourself, no distractions, go sit at a coffee shop, go sit in a conference room somewhere away from everybody else. And this is the day when you decide the stuff I gave you the homework on, when you're doing your pro-con list, should you change your prices? Because we've all have those things that we say, yeah, I need to get around to that. I need to get around to that. That's really important. That's a good idea. I need to look into that. All of those things, you have to make the day to do that. The work on the business day is about not having the time. It's about making the time to be an owner. I'm going to recycle back to those of you that are employees. This is also about you deciding what you want to do with your career. There is something exceedingly powerful about focusing without distraction. I call it working meditation in a lot of ways. I'll go hide in a coffee shop. I will disconnect my computer. I don't answer emails. I don't answer texts. I just sit there and think about what's working, what's not working, what action should I do, what research should I do. Over the course of a quarter, there's a million times you're going to say, I need to look into that. Make a list. And then you're going to take that list and compare it to that other list that you created about all the stuff that you want to tackle. Make the time. This brings us back to the 3 ways change hits you. You're planning for change. When you plan for change, you have more control of it. You've got the reins on that unruly horse, and you can start to guide it. And I'm from Texas, y'all. I had to use a horse analogy somewhere. So how can you control this business? If you feel like you're constantly reacting to the world and putting out fires and you just get home exhausted and you're like, I don't know what I did today, make the time at least quarterly. I do it monthly now. Actually, I do it more than that now that I have my employees taking care of stuff. Be the business owner or be the person that owns your own career and start tackling this stuff. Change is not going to stop. Change is going to keep coming at you. The more you can plan for it, the more you can anticipate, the better off you're going to be. And I'm not kidding. If I have one secret to my success, it was the implementation of the work on the business day back in 2007 when I did my very first one, and it blew the doors off of things. So hopefully that's helpful. And I have one last quote for you before we wrap to Q&A. Change for the sake of change is stupid. It's from this really famous guy, Sean Duncan. Okay, yeah, I made that up. But it's really, I don't want you to make change just to make change. And this is one of those things where I've had conversation with people about AI. Don't go implement AI into your business just because you're supposed to implement AI. I want you to go back to those 5 R's. What's the reason? What's the ROI? It's fine to tinker and learn how the tool works. That's part of that, maybe that fun thing. But I want you to always be focused on, how does this help me? Is it making me better? Sometimes if you're a visionary type like me, you kind of get jazzed by the notion of trying something new or something change. I have to ground myself and not change things when they're working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Make sure you're tactical and strategic about your changes. So, I know that was a lot, but I also tried to keep it high summary level for you. If you guys do get bored at some point, go Google up 5 R's, go Google up the steps of project management and change management. A lot of this stuff, you can go read those same articles that I was researching to build all of this, but I wanted to keep it simple. Again, we only had 50 minutes for you. Any questions that you want to make sure that we tackle? You guys did a great job on some of the questions. I saw some of them were cleared as we were going that I didn't have to answer, that other people answered. Anything else, kids? All right, Gail, I want to hand this one over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for an outstanding presentation that gave us a lot of food for thought. We hope all of you enjoyed this webinar. We really thank you for sharing your time with us. You can find all of our upcoming webinars at cpapracticeadvisor.com/webinars, and also the recording of this webinar will be available at that same location. So if you want to watch it again or share it with someone else you know, that's where you'll find it, cpapracticeadvisor.com/webinars. We want to thank Canopy for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer free CPE credit to each attendee. Don't forget, your CPE credit will come to you in your email box later this afternoon. It's coming from CPA Practice Advisor. If you have any questions about CPE, you can contact me, Perry, Perry, at cpapracticeadvisor.com. We're going to present you with a little evaluation survey that's going to appear on your screen momentarily. Filling out this form is optional, but we hope you'll share your feedback with us so we can continue to improve our webinar series. Thank you again to everyone, and to Sean and Canopy, and our audio will end right now.
Thanks, guys.